Chapter 16. Warren Performs. Now the air began to be warm and the sun to shine. One day, when the three adventurers were in the woods hunting for arbutus to take to Teacher, they heard a roaring on the river. "The ice is going out," said Tom. "Let's go and see." They ran to the river bank and stood together, watching. They could not hear each other speak above the sound of grinding, crashing ice. By evening, the ice had piled itself in places as high as the tavern at Dunville. The tavern on the other side of the river was cut off from the town entirely. In summer, a ferry plied between the two banks. In winter, folks crossed on the ice. But now the two banks were separated by a great jam of ice that groaned and creaked and made its slow way down to larger rivers. "It won't be long now until the little steamer comes again," said Mrs. Woodlawn with a smile. "Of course we shouldn't complain now that they bring some of our mail in on sledges, but just the same, I like it better to be in touch with Boston and the rest of the world. Children, what should you think of having your cousin Annabelle from Boston here to visit you this summer? Her parents have been talking of letting her make the journey for some time. She could go by the steam cars to St. Louis, visit Uncle Edmund's folks, and come on here by boat. I think I'll sit down and write them this very day." "What's she like, Mother?" "Oh, I haven't seen her for years, of course, but she was a darling little girl and very accomplished. She's not so old as Clara, nearer Caddie's age, I believe, but, well, she's been reared as a lady and will be nicely finished, I am sure." "Oh, that kind of girl," said Tom. Caddie's heart, which had undergone a certain disagreeable chill at Mother's, but, well, she's been reared as a lady, warmed pleasantly again at the deep scorn in Tom's voice. Tom was more than a brother. He was a friend. However, the whole family looked with interest and a sense of expectation at the letter which Mother wrote and directed to Miss Annabel Gray of Boston. It stood upon a shelf in the parlor for many days, waiting for the little steamer to come and take it. Before the ice went out, Father and Robert Ireton had gone through the woods adjoining the farm and tapped the sugar maple trees. This was a delightful business to Tom, Caddie, and Warren, who made the rounds of the sap buckets in the afternoons after school, and felt that they were chiefly responsible for the maple syrup that was so good on Mrs. Conroy's hot cakes. And now vacation loomed delightfully ahead. The winter term of school was almost over, and Miss Parker would go and teach the children of Durand their ABCs and multiplication tables for 3 months. The last day of school was to be a speaking day with songs by the school and recitations by some of the pupils. Caddie and Warren both had pieces. Caddie's was a very noble one, beginning, "A traveler on a dusty road strewed acorns on the lea, and one took root and sprouted up and grew into a tree." The poem went on to say that as carelessly tossed acorns may grow into great oaks, so may little words and deeds of kindness grow into great and beautiful things. Under Mother's coaching, Caddie had practiced it with gestures and a fine Boston accent, and it was quite perfect. But everyone felt a little doubtful of Warren. His piece was so short that it seemed impossible that he should be able to forget it, or mix it up in any way. But Warren was not gifted as a public speaker. He said it over and over as he went about the house. "If at first you don't succeed, try again." "That's easy, isn't it? You don't think I'll forget it, do you?" "Of course not, Warren," said Caddie. "Just don't get stage fright, that's all." "What's stage fright?" asked Warren in a worried tone. "Oh, just being scared when you have to get up and see so many eyes looking at you." "You won't have time to get scared with a piece as short as that," laughed Tom. Then he struck a dramatic attitude and declaimed, "If at first you don't fricassee, fry a hen." This struck Warren as tremendously funny, and he went about the house giving Tom's version of the piece as often as he gave the correct one. On the morning of the speaking day, the sky was full of black clouds. There was a heavy stillness in the air, with an occasional drop of rain and a rumbling of distant thunder. "There's going to be a dreadful storm," said Mrs. Woodlawn. "I can feel it in the air. I planned to take Minnie and baby Joe to the speaking, but I don't dare risk it on such a day. It looks black enough for a tornado or a cloudburst. I really believe that you children had all better stay at home where you'll be safe." "Stay at home from the speaking?" cried Caddie in dismay, thinking of her best white apron so nicely starched, and of the gestures and the Boston accent. Were they all to be wasted? "Why, I mean, Mother, we've gone to school in stormy weather all winter," said Tom. "It won't hurt us." "I think Mother's right. We better stay at home," said Warren, who was beginning to look a little pale around the gills. Ever since he'd arisen that morning, the air about him had been filled with muttered try agains, and sometimes with fry a hens, which slipped out inadvertently. "I'm going," said Hetty stoutly. Well, go along," said Mrs. Woodlawn, "but I'll keep the little ones at home." So away the 4 Woodlawns trudged to school. The schoolroom was decorated with evergreen branches and a loop of faded bunting, and the children were conspicuously starched and clean. Miss Parker herself had on a shiny black silk apron instead of the usual one of speckled calico. A few of the Dunville parents sat on benches at the front of the room, looking self-conscious and important. Caddie's heart beat a little faster, but not so much for herself as for Warren, whose face wore a look of dark foreboding. Could one possibly forget a piece so short as his? Wondered Caddie uncomfortably. Then she heard Miss Parker calling her name, and she got up without hesitation, mounted the platform, and made the neat curtsy Mother had taught her. A traveler on a dusty road strewed acorns on the lea, and one took root. It went off perfectly, gestures, Boston accent, and everything. She dropped another curtsy and returned to her seat, feeling that perhaps for the first time in her life she had acquitted herself exactly as an accomplished young lady would have done. Too bad that Mother had not been there to see. While she was still glowing with this novel achievement, she heard Miss Parker announce, "And now Master Warren Woodlawn will be heard in a recitation. Come right up here in front, Warren." For a moment Warren clung desperately to the bench on which he sat. Then with a rush he mounted the platform and began to recite in a very loud voice, "If at first you don't fricassee, fry a hen." "Oh," said Caddie. "Oh," said everybody else in various degrees of consternation and amusement. The titters spread into a roar of laughter. "Warren Woodlawn," said Miss Parker grimly, "you will please stop and see me after school." She rapped on her desk with her ruler, and silence was restored. But what a merry silence for everyone except Warren and poor, outraged Miss Parker. The whoop and hurrah with which school always let out for the term was somewhat spoiled for Tom and Caddie and Hetty. How could one jump and shout with Warren still sitting uncomfortably on his bench, waiting for Miss Parker to finish shaking hands with the parents? Besides, the storm, which had been saving its fury all the morning, was just beginning to break over the schoolhouse. There were gusts of wind and rain, and clap after clap of thunder, with jagged streaks of lightning in the dark sky. The children scattered for their homes more quickly and silently than usual. Tom, Caddie, and Hetty stayed in the cloakroom waiting for Warren. "Golly, I wish she'd hurry up," said Tom. "We're going to get a good ducking before we get home if she doesn't." "Let's go in," said Caddie. Cautiously they pushed the schoolroom door and entered the room, which was now deserted except for Warren and Miss Parker. "Now, Warren," Miss Parker was saying, "I give you one more opportunity to say your piece correctly. Now go ahead, do." Warren, his face very red, his hands very much in the way, began to mumble the famous piece. But all that would come out, try as he might, was fry, fry a hen. Ominously, Miss Parker reached for her ruler. "Oh, say, ma'am," said Tom, coming quickly forward with his nicest smile, "I guess it's my fault, 'cause I taught him that. You see, it's the first piece he ever spoke, and I guess he's pretty scared. I hope you'll forgive him and lay the blame on me." Miss Parker laid down her ruler with a sigh of relief. "Well, well," she said, "it's the last day of school. Run along now, all of you." But as they were starting home, all happily reunited, she ran after them to say, "Better come back and wait until the storm's over. You've got a long ways to go." "We can make it," called back Tom cheerfully. "Mother'll worry if we're late. Goodbye, Miss Parker." "Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye," called the other three. "Goodbye," called Miss Parker, "and you're nice children, all of you, even if Warren did disgrace me." Before they had gone half a mile, the storm broke with all its strength. Lightning and thunder crashed and flashed together in a perfect fury. Stunned by the force of it, the children ran for shelter under the great oak tree that marked the halfway point between home and school. Its branches lashed and creaked, but it was something sturdy to cling to. Caddie and Warren and Hetty clung together under the tree, but Tom urged them on. "Let's get home," he shouted. "Let's run for it." "Oh, please, let's wait here," begged the others. "No," cried Tom. "We've got to get home. Come along, every one of you." When Tom made up his mind, the others followed him. Shielding their faces, they dashed out of shelter and along the road. Crash! Bang! There was a blinding flash, and something hurled them onto the ground. Dazed and crying, they picked themselves up and looked back. The oak tree had been split in two by lightning. Another moment under its shelter, and all of them might have been killed. How they ran that last half mile! No one had ever run it so quickly before. Even Hetty could not outstrip the others to be the first to tell. Breathless and wild-eyed, with wet and muddy clothes, they rushed into the kitchen. "Mother!" they shouted all together. "Mother, listen to what happened to us." Until next time.